Well, welcome to Quest Leadership Live. I'm your host, Tom Toney. I'm so glad that you joined me here today. Take a quick second, if you would, and just click the share button. Share this out. Let's get people connected to the topic we're going to talk about today. As we always talk about here on Quest Leadership Live, coaching young students to become strong leaders. What if I told you that one of the best ways for me to help be an influence and a coach in your life and in your journey was for me to better understand my own journey? That's what we're going to talk about today here on Quest Leadership Live. I don't know if you've ever thought about this before or not, but I want you to consider this idea that one of the greatest impacts on your reality is who you are. The world around you is often responding to you. How you see things, the lens through which you interpret life, how you see relationships, impacts how you interact with people. How you interact with people impacts that relationship. It's dynamic. And so much of our reality is really based on who we are, our perspective of a moment, what we just heard, how we interpreted what was said, what was done, what was given, what was provided, what wasn't said, what wasn't done. How we interpret these moments through our own filter in our own lives has a huge impact on how not only we view our world, but how our world responds to us. And it's no different when it comes to coaching young students. Whether you're a teacher, or a mentor, or a coach, who you are has a profound impact on how your students respond to you and how they experience your relationship with them and the coaching that you're bringing to them. I want to talk about this a little bit today because, in my opinion, this is one of the most important and powerful things that we can talk about where it concerns becoming a stronger coach to help young leaders develop into the gifts they have, who we know they can be, to begin to see their future. We have to understand our own journey, and that's today's topic, understanding my journey. Now, here's something that we probably do. We often probably think about our own lives. We probably think about our own likes, dislikes, all those types of things. But how often do we think about them in light of how that's impacting other people? That's what I want to draw you into today in this conversation as a coach, is how who you are impacts who you are influencing. So I want to look at a few points here as we talk about this important topic of coaching and understanding my own journey. So if I want to understand my journey as a coach, the first thing that I have to recognize is how who I am is impacting the world around me. I first have to kind of grip that truth. So I'm just going to assume, for the sake of this conversation, that you're on the same page I am with. We're on the same page together in this. And that is that we believe who we are makes a difference in our world. I don't mean that just from the necessity that you make a difference in your world. I'm saying who you are actually creates the environment of your world. If you've ever been in a relationship, maybe you have kids, maybe you have friends, and you've ever witnessed your kids or those friends acting differently around other people than they act with you. If you've ever stepped back to go, why don't you act that way when we're together? Why don't you respond to me like you respond to them? Well, that's because you are you and them are them. They are who they are. And so we all respond differently to the person that we're responding to. And here's where it gets a little odd, weird. You got to pay attention. But yet that person, when it's you, it's them responding to you and who you are. The point here is that who we are has a profound impact on the rhythm and the flow and the environment and the atmosphere of our world. If that's true, and we know it's true, Is it also true inside the classroom? Is it also true on the sports field? Is it also true in the lives of the kids that we're coaching? How is it that who you are, who I am, may be impacting a student's ability to actually be educated, to actually perform better in that sporting moment, in that recital moment, to actually grow in character? Understanding our own journey is going to help us begin to unlock a bit of that relationship and help us to be more sensitive to the impact that we are having on their lives. So let's look at a few points here where it concerns this. And that point number one is this, is that you and your students have quite a lot in common. One of the things that you'll begin to recognize if you study people at all, if you pay attention to who people are and personalities and so on, you'll begin to see some common threads, common themes emerge in personality styles. In fact, there are all kinds of styles today, whether you're doing the DISC assessment or any of the others, Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, the popular Enneagram right now. If you're doing any of those, what you see is a finite list. Means it's not infinite, it's not unlimited, it's kind of limited to a certain number of themes within personalities. Now, within that, obviously, we have mixes, but there's typically, I believe in Enneagram, it's 8, in DISC, it's 4 personalities that emerge, and then variances of those personalities based on mix. What does that mean? That means that there's actually a finite reality to who we are, that we find a lot of common traits. And so while you and I will have common traits, we could be actually grouped together by personality style and so on. The same thing is true with your students. We also have a lot in common with our students. So our students also weave in and out of those personality styles. Now, as we get older, they become more set in stone. We're less likely to morph from one to the other quite rapidly. But for students, man, they're doing it on a constant basis all day long. And typically it's in response to their environment, how others are interacting with them. If they go out to recess and they have a confrontation on recess, then there's a high likelihood that student is going to come back to class portraying certain personality styles based on that interaction on recess. So they interacted with another individual and it impacted who they were. So they came back and they're going to act from a certain perspective. Or if they were on recess and they had a great recess, maybe they played a game of kickball and they won. So they come back into the room, completely different person, coming from a completely different personality profile based on that interaction that they're having on the playground. So for students, young students especially, they are just can be all over the place. But as they get older, what we begin to see is that consistent patterns emerge in who they are. So you and your students have quite a lot in common in that they are developing to become a person just like you did, just like I did. My personality style now largely set in stone. You can morph to some extent in certain situations, but largely we are who we are because of just how our brains have developed and so on. But because kids are still formable, they're still learning all of that. They're not quite there yet. And so they're a lot more fluid than we are, yet it's the same perspectives that they're dealing with. So we have quite a lot in common with our students. The more we understand ourselves, the more we can understand them, the more we understand about our own journey. How did we get here? How did I become this person? The more we can understand about the journey that our students are on. The second thing I want you to see is that who you are began with who you were. This is the way I like to say it, is we spend 80% of our lives becoming who we became or being who we became in the first 20%. Let me say that again. We spend 80% of our lives being who we became in the first 20%. So by the time our brains are pretty much done kind of being built out, being established, being formed, and things get set in stone in our lives, all of that work gets done. We spend the vast majority of our lives being that person. Certainly there's room for change. Certainly people do change, but the work of change is entirely different after that point than it is in the beginning stages. So if who we are began with who we were, then what does that say about our students? that who they are is determining who they will be. So they are today where we were at one point. So this goes back to point number one. We have quite a lot in common with our students. They're going through the same things that we went through to become who we are. They're going through the same things to become who they are. So the more we understand about this journey, our own journey, and this journey in general, the more we understand about interacting with our students and how who we are is impacting who they are becoming. It's cyclical. But I'm telling you, this is so incredibly powerful. This is a main, basic, fundamental understanding for us to get our heads wrapped around if we're going to be effective in coaching the next generation. Why is that? Well, let's look at point number 3. What you value drives what you do. So who we've become over time, the thing that has emerged in who we are, has been based on a set of values that we've established. Over this time, we've vetted values. Values have come into and out of our lives. And the things that have stuck with us over time are what have created this concrete person that we are today. The things that we like, the things that we don't like, the things that we're passionate about, the things that we fear, all those things have been formed in that process and now drive what we do. The picture I like to give of values is that consider your values to be the lockbox inside the bank. So you go into a bank and you have the lobby. Then you have inside the lobby, you have the vault. And inside the vault, you have the lockbox. That lockbox is where we keep the most precious things to us. Our precious items get in that lockbox, and then they go inside the vault. And inside that vault is then inside the building. Layers of protection that keep those precious things safe. Those are our values. Our values then drive the vault. The vault is there to protect the values. That vault are our habits. The things that we do habitually all the time, our patterns, our rhythms, our habits are all established around the values to protect the values. They're there to keep those values in place. The vault then is what people see in the lobby. The lobby represents how we present ourselves to the world around us, which is in response to what's inside the vault, which are the values that are locked up inside of who we are. Now, what does all this mean? As coaches, when we respond in a certain situation to our students, it is not out of response to who they are. It's out of response of who we are and what we value and how those two things align. If you have a student with which your values align, you're much more likely to get along. If you're dealing with a student when your values don't align, you're much less likely to get along. And we're much more likely to treat those students based on the values they're portraying to us. They go out on recess, have a bad recess, come in and have an attitude. We don't like attitude. Our value is humility, and that's going to rub us the wrong way. And we're going to respond to that student in a way that's in alignment with our values. And likely we're going to respond in a way that does not allow them to come out of that wrong attitude and kind of deal with the pain they're feeling. And so we end up poking the pain in their lives. Why? Because our values don't match up. When if we would just pause and go, I totally remember what it was like to have to deal with having been bullied on the playground or lost the game or felt in some way insignificant, unliked, unwanted, unaccepted. I know what it's like to deal with that. So rather than responding to them purely just out of who we are, we remember, oh, wait, I remember my own journey. I remember how that was for me. And it allows us to respond from a place of compassion for them when what we value is what drives what we do. So our value system has to be switched back to away from just the things that we prefer, how we prefer to be, and remind ourselves that we are a part of the process of helping to develop this person. And that becomes our driving value. So what you value, and the same thing is true for your students, what they value drives what they do. If they value acceptance, if they value conciseness, they want to know what's going to happen next for a moment. They got to have clarity. If they value not being taken advantage of, if they value security and stability and everything's got to be the same, whatever's they're valuing in the moment is going to drive how they're reacting. And if we can recall our own journey, remember that made us who we are, they're becoming that same person that can help us to empathetically and even sympathetically respond to them in the moment and help them navigate that time in their development. So your preference often advises your satisfaction. What we prefer in a situation often drives how satisfied we are with that situation. If we just take it down to some really basic principles here and examples of, if you go to a restaurant and you order steak and you prefer your steak well done, but it comes back medium rare, how satisfied are you going to be with that steak? Not very, because you don't prefer medium rare. You prefer medium well or well done. A big difference between the two, but your preference is what's driving that satisfaction. The person next to you that prefers medium rare may look at you and go, "What's wrong with you?" That's perfect. That's exactly how a steak should be. Why? Because their preference is driving their satisfaction. They're satisfied with that steak, but you're not. And the conflict is preference. So if we recognize that my preference is driving my satisfaction, if I feel dissatisfied with an environment, with a situation, with a conversation, with an interaction with a student, the first thing that I should ask myself is, what's driving that dissatisfaction? Is it just my own preference? Or is it that I truly see adverse behavior here that's going to impact the development of this student? And if we can climb outside of our own preference and remember that they are in the process of building their preferences, then that can kind of temper how we respond to that and give us the chance to truly be developmental and to have a coaching perspective on developing who they are. So we got to remember that your students share your fears and uncertainties. So the same things that we fear, the same uncertainties that we deal with, are the same fears and uncertainties they deal with. We go back to the personality styles. You go back to the Enneagram, to the DISC. And with those styles are associated fears. With DISC, for example, DIS and C, the driving personality, the associated fear is the fear of being taken advantage of. For the I personality, that high I person who is very interactive and likes to talk and is very friendly, that the driving fear behind that is a fear of rejection. The person who's an S personality that loves stability, wants to know what's going to happen next and status quo, wants everything the same every day. The driving fear behind that is a fear of the loss of security. The high C personality, the ones that's very clear, they want clarity. They want to know, they're very conscientious. They want to get it right. They want things to be precise. That personality is driven by a fear of criticism. Those same fears are driving both you and the student. They're driving me and the student. So when I fear criticism, they're fearing criticism. When I fear rejection, they're also feeling the fear of rejection when they're acting in that style. So again, understanding my own journey, how did I get here? I got here because those underlying fears were driving me to respond to my life, my surroundings and atmosphere in a certain way, and they just got built into my habit and my process. Well, if the student is acting that way, they're being driven by the exact same thing. They share my fears and uncertainties. So what happens if I recognize that? And rather than driving and pushing the pain they're feeling, let me give an example. If you have a student who's acting in a high I personality, they're very talkative, talking a lot, being very social, and as a result are being disruptive in the situation during your lesson or your activity. What is it that we typically do? We typically respond to that to say, sit down and be quiet. Well, sit down and be quiet in response to a student who's acting out of a high I personalities trait. Maybe they're feeling that sense of rejection and they just want to be, they're trying to get people to like them. So they're talking, they're trying to be the life of the party and get everybody laughing and all of that. Saying, sit down and knock it off, actually provokes and pushes on and pokes the pain that they're feeling, which may be rejection, the fear of rejection. They just got rejected. So that helps us to fashion our response, understanding and knowing our own journey, what it is underlying for us, may help us to fashion a response in a way that would empower them and help to meet the underlying need while also establishing social norms for interactions in certain moments and getting away from chaos and keeping more control in a setting and appropriate behavior and so on. But understanding your own journey is going to help us understand what's driving in this moment and how can I help to meet that need. And then finally today, just like our students, we need encouragement. You need encouragement just like they need encouragement. Courage, which is built on a foundation of intimacy. And by intimacy, I simply mean being vulnerable and open to building a strong relationship with one another. That courage comes from the confidence that kind of relationship establishes. When a student feels as though you understand them, you know their journey because their journey is not unlike your journey. It helps you to have a compassion and an empathy toward them. You understand a bit more of the underlying wants and needs that they're experiencing, how you can meet those practically. That helps to build a foundation of confidence and courage. And from that courage, they can begin to shape and shift their behavior in a way that's more conducive to the setting that you're in and your ability to draw out of them as a coach. So there's so much that we can understand about our students just by taking a moment to step back and truly understand our own journey. How do we do this? One of the most practical ways that I can show and share with you to do this is to find a good friend and to plan a visit, which in these times may look like Zoom. It may look like being outside and social distancing, whatever it takes. But getting across from that friend and just doing some discovery, talking about the things that you like, the passions that drive you, the fears that haunt you, the things that you have to work through, the things you're trying to overcome, what gives you courage, what gives you pause, and to talk out loud about them, not necessarily just a rant or event session, but a session of discovery. What is it about me that makes me who I am? And the more you understand that, the more you can understand how who you are is impacting the dynamic of your relationship with your students and understanding their journey and how you can influence that journey to bring the best out of them. I hope this is helpful for you. I'm telling you, this is a key component of the future of coaching. Understanding your own journey and how it impacts the journey of your students is a huge part of becoming a greater, more effective coach. And I want to encourage you, you can do it. Come on, start that journey. If you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. You can let us know. We'll do everything we can to encourage you on that as you go through the process of being a great coach. But in the meantime, be sure to join us next time here on Quest Leadership Live. Let everybody know about Quest Leadership Live. We'd love for you to share this out with them. Let them know we're here every week. We look forward to spending time with you next week. And so until then, keep building strong young leaders.